Hello everyone and welcome back to More Knowing Wheel, episode 104, and today we return ready to look forward to the antics from the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, round 2 of the F1 2023 Formula 1 season. And of course, as always, I'm joined by a man who actually, as a fun coincidence, he has the same religion as Red Bull's boss's first name. Yes, we're joined by Jamie183 as always. How are we doing, mate?
Crazy stat. Never. Yeah.
We won't get that on any other podcast.
I didn't believe you'd actually use that as the intro, but here we are.
You said I should use it, so I used it.
Coincidentally, this episode marks the number one more than Lewis Hamilton's total race wins in his career.
Yep.
And while they're looking like at Mercedes pace, it looks like that might be it really for him.
That's what worries me.
Yeah. So Saudi Arabia coming up to preview that, which is also the venue of Lewis Hamilton's last ever race win.
Yes, win number 103.
So just reminding Matt that it's been 18 months since his driver had any success from the off.
I think any success is a bit unfair, but yeah, I suppose. I mean, how long ago was it that Nico Hulkenberg had decent success? When was Nico Hulkenberg's last
2015
podium?
Le Mans.
2015 Le Mans, so 8 years ago. Okay, Jamie, yep, you win that round. But anyway, yeah, I mean, we've got a few things to go through this week. It's been a weird little week of Formula 1 news, hasn't it, Jamie? Of course, we looked back over the Bahrain Grand Prix, and then a lot of bizarre stories have kind of come out that. Some of them are fairly undramatic, so we'll go through those first, and then a few of them obviously quite dramatic, which of course timestamps will be linked down below. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, there's also links to Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. Let us know if you're listening to this and you want this going elsewhere. Let us know. Preferably don't say in the bin. But let's talk then, Jamie. First of all, McLaren are apparently in talks with Red Bull about going back to Honda Power again.
Yeah, which I believe you called that happening, but it was off a podcast. So
I said that on a podcast.
Was it on a correctly?
Podcast? Yes, I went out on a limb saying McLaren Honda, I reckon, is going to go back.
Fair play. I don't think they're in negotiations. I think what the actual story was, Christian Horner had been contacted by Zach Brown regarding Red Bull Power for 2026. So I don't know if they're in negotiations, but certainly there have been talks.
Well, this is the complicated thing, isn't it? Because from what the articles I read, we couldn't work out whether he was talking exclusively about Red Bull powertrains, which is effectively, of course, Honda Power, or whether they were going to try and look to do a tie-in with Ford Power. We couldn't quite work out which way around it was going to work, so we kind of just assumed that Honda Power would be better for clickbait, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. McLaren Honda round 3.
Yeah.
And it kind of is interesting that McLaren, it feels like every time they kind of stagnate in their progress, they just like, right, let's change engine at this point, really, because obviously there was a lot made of the initial McLaren Honda move in 2015. That obviously blew up and was awful. The move to Renault was meant to be it, and now he can fight all that rubbish with Alonso and Van Dorn for a bit. That didn't really go anywhere. They end up back at Mercedes and then got a race win. Then they've gone backwards again. Where does it end? When does it end? What are they going to do? Just keep going in circles until they actually work out that they're the problem? I'm not sure.
Ferrari Power.
Yeah, McLaren Ferrari would absolutely never happen.
No, that'd be the most cursed thing in the world.
Yeah.
Speaking, though, of course, you mentioned with Fernando Alonso. Did you read as well the article that came out this week of him talking about how Ferrari had offered him a contract extension in 2014 right the way through to 2019 to stay at Ferrari, but he thought McLaren Honda would be, and I quote, a better and safer move.
Safer?
Apparently so.
That's a bit ridiculous. I think Alonso had his soul worn down by Ferrari.
Yeah, I mean, so imagine being there for a decade, not being Michael Schumacher.
Yeah. At least Schumacher won half the years he was there in terms of titles. But yeah, I think McLaren, they need some real, I don't know what they need to do, to be honest, but they need to come up with a long-term plan and almost do what Red Bull have done and kind of get their own engine from somewhere, because all the time they're being a customer, there's not really much chance they're going to win. We never really saw customer teams win world championships apart from with Red Bull Renault, and even for the most of those years Renault weren't on the grid. So yeah, same could be said with McLaren Mercedes back in the day, but it is difficult for them because obviously Mercedes are on the grid, Renault are effectively on the grid through Alpine, and Red Bull have their own people now with Honda than it will be Ford. So yeah, unless they do go back to Honda and then stay with Honda once Ford take over Red Bull, then they've got really nowhere else to go.
And this was the big point I remember making on the show a few weeks ago when I said McLaren Honda could be back. There's one huge change that's gone down in McLaren over the last few years, and that is the management structure. You know, Ron Dennis out, Zach Brown in. I feel that now McLaren have learned enough that, because of course the big problem that we always spoke about with why McLaren Honda didn't work was McLaren went, right, we've built this chassis. It's better than anything else in the world. You have to make your power unit fit inside this. Of course, Honda tried and tried and tried. It didn't work. And then, of course, we got to 2018 when they went back to Renault Power. Of course, they still were hyping up this chassis all the time, or these various chassis that they'd made. And then they were slower than Renault anyway. So it was quite clear from there that obviously everyone then suddenly knew that actually McLaren didn't build particularly brilliant chassis either. The power unit certainly didn't help on a lot of those occasions. And then, of course, whilst they're struggling with this Renault power unit slower than Renault, AlphaTauri are picking up 4th place at Bahrain, for example, and doing really well with Honda power because they're Honda. I think this is the thing, isn't it, that people always forget. Honda are the largest, in terms of raw units, the largest engine manufacturer in the world. Yes, a lot of those do go into literal lawnmowers. They know how to build engines. They know what they're doing. McLaren, just if they go back to Honda, they need to go, right, just build us a power unit that will match everyone else, and we will build the car around it.
Which is kind of what Red Bull did in taking them as a factory.
Exactly, and this is, I think, the thing that as well, a lot of people that are coming back, or not back into sport, but sort of getting more into the sport now are realising, and I mean, we've said this for years, Adrian Newey is the best person ever in Formula 1. Like like driver, team principal, anything like that. Adrian Newey is by far and away the most gifted person that has ever been in Formula 1. And I think when he does finally call it quits, people will... I mean, a lot of people obviously already realise that, but I think he still goes massively underrated because he's just absolutely insane, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, he's responsible in terms of, like, heading up championship winning cars and drivers. He probably has more world championships influence than anyone else ever. I think he definitely does.
He's got to be right up there, unless you've got someone that's hung around Ferrari throughout a lot of their generations and things like that.
Because he must be, like, he was at,
debuted at Leighton House in 1991, if I remember correctly.
It was all through McLaren's heyday.
Yeah.
And then moved to Red Bull and won all of them with Vettel as well.
Yeah.
So, and Verstappen now, of course. So
he's been winning world championships literally since before we were born.
yeah. I don't know how we got onto this tangent, but you could tell the years he was working on the Aston Valkyrie, the hypercar, this road car, they were the years where Red Bull started struggling aero-wise and were kind of dropping down to 3rd. And then as soon as he's done with his side projects and getting bored of F1 for a bit, he comes back and they immediately start rising back to the top. Yeah.
And I mean, this is the thing. I saw a brilliant thing earlier on. I think it was on TikTok of someone had just posted a comment going, "I'm willing to bet after the Bahrain Grand Prix, Adrian Newey went home and doodled a better Mercedes W14."
Yeah,
it's probably true. That's the frustrating thing about it.
I don't understand how he's so much better than everyone else. He is.
He's one of those rare people, isn't he? And I know we've said this before. He's one of those rare people that you'll never be able to know how. But you just know he views the world in a slightly different way, and that's what makes him special.
Yeah. He just looks at anything and can tell.
He just seems to be able to see things with a different perspective to the rest of us, and hats off to him, because, I mean, he is, don't get me wrong, Max is a very, very incredible driver and all this, that, and the other. But Adrian Newey makes champions.
Yeah, definitely. But that's enough of a tangent. I don't think we were going there.
No, I thought that was quite podcast, good. But, it's an off week. We can do what we like.
We'll move on from our Adrian Newey loving.
Yes,
back to Saudi Arabia, which is where the Grand Prix is being this weekend.
Yep.
Hopefully this year there's no missile strikes during practice.
That would be nice if we don't have buildings on fire in the background.
Yeah, that was not ideal last year, especially when it got brushed over by absolutely everybody possible. But yeah, it's not really many changes to the track. There's been a few widenings. Obviously, it's one of the most exhilarating tracks to watch an onboard of all year, really. just because of the speed and how close the walls are. Usually makes for a good race. We've had 2 chaotic races. I don't know how about good, but yeah, the first 2 races have been pretty entertaining, at least. Maybe not good, as I just said, but hopefully we get an entertaining one again. But we'll see. The pace in Bahrain, in terms of car pace, I'm not optimistic for loads of excellent races unless some chaos goes ahead.
I think, I mean, this is what a lot of people have spoke about as well, and whether it's, a little bit of desperation to try and hope that there's still going to be a title fight this year. Bahrain, apparently, now this is coming from people much smarter than you and I, Bahrain apparently really did play into Red Bull's strengths because of just how abrasive and traction limited the circuit is. It is believed, don't get me wrong, I don't think Red Bull are going to be a million miles away from the front, if not at the front still anyway. But apparently this race should play towards Mercedes, Ferrari and Aston Martin and bring Red Bull closer to them.
Yeah, and it's the first insight we've had into seeing these cars anywhere other than Bahrain.
Yes.
Because obviously all the testing was there. And it's still obviously a similar part of the world, but in terms of track character and track behavior, it's very different to Bahrain. It's very high speed, not loads of traction zones, braking zones, and I think the track surface is much smoother, so tyre wear shouldn't be a limitation, which was kind of Red Bull's massive strength, was because their tyres lasted so much longer than everyone else's in Bahrain. So it could be a close 4-way fight for the win. Who knows?
4 or 8,
even 8. Lance Stroll could be up there.
I mean, this was going to be a question I was going to ask you later on in this show, Jamie. But as we've mentioned him now, I'll ask you. The last 4 years, 3 or 4 years, I'm trying to think back. Obviously, last year we saw Carlos Sainz take his first ever F1 victory. 2021 we saw Ocon take his first ever victory. 2020 Gasly. 2019 Charles Leclerc. I don't think there was a new Grand Prix winner back in 2018, so it is the last 4 years in a row. Do we think we'll see a new Grand Prix winner this year? And could it be Lance Stroll?
Well, that's the only candidate, really, isn't it?
Well, I don't think you would have said Gasly or Ocon in 20 or 2021.
True. Without a very strange race, then the only driver in those top 4 teams to have not won is worryingly Lance Stroll.
I also forgot to mention Russell last year as a first-time winner.
Yeah. I mean, unless you do get a chaotic race, and I don't know who's even top of the midfield anymore.
Don't know yet. Too early to call, isn't it?
Who actually is?
Alfa Romeo.
Both Alpines have. Bottas has won a race. Joe? I don't think Joe's going to win a race, to be honest. It's either Stroll.
Don't say Nico Hulkenberg.
Or it's like a Olivier Panis style Hulk victory.
No, don't say Nico Hulkenberg. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Obviously, going back to Saudi quickly. Again, we're tangenting today. It's a tangent kind of show. Do we think? Of course, the big hope, isn't it, by pretty much everyone, is that Red Bull will be dragged back towards Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin. Of course, we mentioned this last week. Ferrari, for whatever reason, weren't focusing on Red Bull. They also weren't focusing on making sure their own cars got both to the checkered flag. I mean, Charles Leclerc was only, a couple of tenths away at the end of qualifying. He could have probably been closer if he'd been given a final run.
Yeah.
Do we think this weekend Ferrari could really rustle their feathers, even if it is only on Saturday?
I think there's definitely potential there. I think Ferrari had the highest speed trap, I think, in Bahrain. So, yeah, it's entirely possible. Obviously, top speed is a big influencer at this kind of track in Saudi Arabia, but of course, different track setups and stuff. Maybe Red Bull run less wing, and they're still able to nurse their tyres. We'll wait and see. But I think it is the sort of track that rewards nailing those final Q3 runs. And as we've said many times, I think Leclerc probably is the best on the grid at that.
Yes.
So certainly on Saturday, I don't see why Ferrari couldn't be right there, or even Alonso and the Aston Martin. Why not? They're they're a little bit more draggy actually than the other two. I think they're sixth fastest in the speed trap. They were not
brilliant down the speed traps.
No.
Yeah.
But we'll wait and see.
I mean, you've just mentioned Charles Leclerc, but there is another driver that's pretty damn good around street circuits, qualifying especially. obviously took pole last year, and, you know, again, obviously you can talk in hypotheticals so much and so forth, but did get screwed by the safety car. He could have rather sensibly won last year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, and I did actually look over the data for this as well. He was closer in Bahrain on pace than he was last year. Could this be the weekend for Checo Perez to continue his street circuit streak?
Well, he's won the last was Monaco, Singapore, wasn't it? I know there's a few more street circuits than that on the calendar now, but those are kind of the typical classic two that we spoke about.
The tight, twisty ones, which Saudi Arabia isn't, but still.
Definitely isn't. But he's very good at street circuits. I don't expect him to beat Verstappen, to be perfectly honest, but I wouldn't expect that last year either. So I'm here to be surprised, but hopefully not for my sake.
I think, I mean, it's still always the question, isn't it, that we wonder at the moment of, say, for example, Checo is on it this weekend and is right there. Will Red Bull tell him to get out of the way?
I don't think they'd bother this early in the season, to be honest. I think they can tell that they've got the rest of the field at arm's length, so they can kind of allow their drivers to fight. They don't need to back Verstappen because he will win anyway over the course of the season.
And Sergio Perez wins the 2023 World Championship.
I don't think they would use team orders in race 2, but then this is Red Bull we're talking about, so maybe they would.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it, I think. But of course, you know, we spoke there about Red Bull still having everyone at arm's length. There is one driver who apparently is less happy with that than any other. We could be in by, just from reading things, and again, it's always a bit difficult to tell, there is a storm brewing over at Ferrari, isn't there? Charles Leclerc went and spoke to not only the top dog of Ferrari F1, but the top dog of Ferrari as an entire business. He went and spoke with John Elkann last week after the DNF. Yeah. That doesn't happen often.
No, definitely not. And I kind of think Leclerc, he's been there, this is his 5th year with Ferrari.
Which is mad.
Which is crazy anyway, we're getting old. But it starts off with a DNF, and the car, certainly in Bahrain, clearly isn't the fastest car on the grid, isn't the favourite for the championship. And he's probably getting a bit impatient. He's obviously tied down to, I think, 2025.
The end of 24, I think.
Yeah. Actually, that's not that long. I remember it being longer than that. But
it might be the end of 2025 then. To be honest, I can't quite remember off the top of my head.
And obviously, Leclerc is quite unhappy. We kind of see this 5-year cycle with Ferrari drivers these days that they, unless you're Michael Schumacher or Felipe Massa, who I guess were still...
Well, Felipe Massa wasn't particularly happy there anymore. They just kept him on because they wanted to promote Santander in South America.
Yeah. And I guess both of them were beneficiaries of when Ferrari were capable, or certainly Schumacher was. So, we kind of see this 5-year cycle. I think Alonso, Vettel were both there for 5 seasons. And then, kind of they'd been worn down by being at Ferrari so long. And obviously Alonso kind of left of his own accord. Vettel was on his way out anyway, probably, but got binned off. Yeah. So we will see. And interestingly, there's there are wholesale changes at Ferrari, probably to appease Leclerc. But if not, could there be an option at another team in the top?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Because of course we've had apparently, who is it? Laurent Mekies has apparently had offers to go elsewhere again. Of course, was with the FIA, if I remember correctly. Went to Ferrari and has now been offered roles either in Alpine, Liberty Media, and the FIA again. I've tried to actually look elsewhere because apparently there are quite a few that, there's a lot of people in Ferrari that jobs are potentially on the line, but you can't get a particularly detailed list anywhere of who's going where at the moment, at least in English. Again, there's part of me that, we sort of say, Leclerc's at the end of his 5-year Ferrari cycle. He might be off elsewhere soon. But there's still part of me, and it might be moronic, that wants to believe that Fred Vasseur is the second coming of Ross Brawn inside Ferrari.
I mean, he's doing a lot more than most other Ferrari team principals have done.
Well, he's not Italian.
Yeah, exactly. So he can actually think straight.
Steady on.
as a Ferrari team principal,
Yeah.
like the success rates of the non-Italian ones have generally been higher than the Italian ones.
Yes.
Which I'm not making a generalization. That's just fact. So, yeah, we will see. He's obviously come in with a bit of an iron fist and many changes. We'll see if they work, basically. But I hope that Leclerc gives them a little bit of loyalty, at least gives time for the new people to make a difference. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Well, I mean, it does hang really on one question, doesn't it, for Charles Leclerc? Because there has been one driver occasionally on the past that has said, if an opportunity opened up for Ferrari, I would consider it. That driver might or might not be 7-time world champion, 103 wins, 103 poles, statistically the greatest driver of all time, Lewis Hamilton. Could we see a swap between Hamilton and Leclerc 2024 or 2025? Because Hamilton, it seems like, might be getting a bit fed up with Mercedes at the moment. Of course, we had this open letter for whatever reason. Even as a Mercedes fan, I thought, why? And it's just a bit ridiculous. Come on, lads.
Apologising for
we came
finishing
fifth and seventh. It wasn't exactly like we had a McLaren performance this weekend. Is there an avenue potentially that we see Leclerc and Hamilton swap?
I think potentially, like, Hamilton has forever, even like when they were battling him and Vettel for championships, he was like, Ferrari are still like Ferrari. Obviously, at that point, he was never going to swap from Mercedes, but now
he always went to them for discussions, though, every year.
Yeah,
don't forget that.
So, I would be surprised. It'd be one of the biggest driver transfer stories of certainly recent history, I feel.
I think Hamilton for Ferrari, you could argue, would be probably one of the biggest transfers of all time.
Yeah.
You know, that's up there with Prost to Ferrari back in 1990 and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, why not? And Leclerc to Mercedes, I think, would be equally as exciting, really.
Oh,
Maybe a bit less headline grabbing, but certainly would be huge for both him and Mercedes, I feel.
I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Because there's still always, and I don't, it will never go away, will it? There's always this kind of, Ferrari is in this mythical status. It always has been, it always will be in Formula 1. And they can be doing absolutely dog-do, but if you get the chance to drive for Ferrari, more often than not, you take that chance to drive for Ferrari. I mean, again, it's well documented nowadays, of course, you know, all the bizarre ins and outs and goings on inside that base at Maranello. But do you think sensibly any driver other than probably Verstappen would turn down the chance to go there?
Right now, probably not, to be honest. And I think, Sebastian Vettel summed it up quite well in Canada to, I think, 2016, where he's like, everyone's a Ferrari fan. Even if you're not a Ferrari fan, you are a Ferrari fan.
Yeah. I mean, Seb did, I think, as much as they might have been him off, I think he certainly showcased what Ferrari means to a lot of people still, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be... I think the thing is, well, of course, for Hamilton, let's be fair. Honestly, if we suddenly got news tomorrow that 2024 Hamilton was going to Ferrari, I would not expect an 8th World Championship to be coming.
No.
But
I don't
for 1 second, imagine if it did.
That would be huge. Be crazy.
If Hamilton did go to Ferrari and win an 8th World Championship, we'd probably describe Hamilton as making the 2 greatest ever driver transfers, wouldn't we? The 2 best moves of any Formula 1 driver of all time. But do I see it happening? I mean, this is the weird thing, isn't it? Of course, Hamilton has been a Mercedes driver his entire career, from 13 years old. You know,
people
talk about McLaren, but of course that was always where he was going to end up in Formula 1 because he was a Mercedes junior. He was always then going to go to Mercedes because he was a Mercedes junior.
Yeah.
Do we think he could give that up? I mean, he'd sell a few more copies of his book, because that is definitely one I want when that comes out.
He has kind of closed the book, hasn't he? He's kind of done all there is to do with Mercedes. Like, I don't see why not. Like, I know that when like Vettel, or even when Button left Brawn, what was effectively like the Brackley team, which is now Mercedes, Button was like, we've set out what we achieved. Like, we achieved what we set out to do, so I can leave and be happy. Because they joined together in 2003, I think it was, to be world champions, and they achieved that, and he's off. And it's like, Hamilton can't achieve anything more other than, you could argue, the 8th championship. He has done all there is to do in Formula 1. So if he was to leave, it wouldn't be toxic, I don't think. He wouldn't be salty, because he's done everything. So why not close that book and give it one more shot with the biggest name in motorsport in terms of teams?
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because there's still no doubt in my... I don't know if you watched Sky did a video with Hamilton, I think it was last week. I don't know if you saw this, where he did a lie detector test.
No.
And they obviously went through all like the normal fun questions, all this, that, and the other, and then he asked him to do some... Well, they said, do you want to do some harder ones? And he went, okay. And they asked him, will he give up on an 8th world title? And
what a stupid question. Of course he's going to say no.
He just gave... You watch him sit there and think about it for a second, and I don't know what must have been going through his mind. But I just remember he gave Simon Lazenby a little smile and went, no.
Yeah.
I think
obvious.
Had 2021 gone his way, and he won that world title like he should have, it would not surprise me if right then and there he said, that's it, I'm done. And honestly, I think if Hamilton does get that 8th world title, that'll be it. He's done with Formula 1. He's done everything he ever set out to achieve. He came into the sport, everyone was against him. He's given everyone the big middle finger, and he's gone and taken every desirable record in the book for himself.
He's not got the most races without a podium.
Every desirable record, Jamie. I mean, I just don't see now, especially with how badly the start of the... Well, not how badly, but just Mercedes has still got that work to do. I don't see Mercedes being that place where he takes that 8th world title this year at the very least, maybe next year as well. Could Ferrari be that place? Imagine it. Imagine.
It would be very cool. It would be extremely cool.
It would be, I think, the most... Yeah. I'd argue the most poetic thing ever in Formula 1.
We would do our... we will do our driver transfers predictions, I'm sure.
In the summer, yeah.
Probably May, given how early silly season.
Well, we'll have to do it after Australia because we've got a 3-week break.
Yeah.
I mean, we are going on rambles and wombles today.
We should probably skip over some of these notes because we've gone on for so long.
Right, let's keep firing it on then, Jamie. Andretti, apparently, are looking to hire Formula 1 staff. They're still trying to make their bid for 2026. What are our thoughts?
Yeah, I hope they do. I really hope they do. And more teams... more creditable teams anyway are always a good thing for Formula 1. So I just hope the teams stop being so pedantic about it, the whole thing, really, because obviously they don't like the competition because it means whoever finishes 11th, it doesn't get prize money effectively. It doesn't get anywhere near as much. So yeah, I really hope they do, but obviously the teams are going to be as difficult as they can.
Well, I think this was the thing, wasn't it? The teams were obviously trying to push back Andretti until they got the new Concord agreement through. Because, of course, the big number wasn't it? $200 million Andretti would have to pay to join, so every team gets $20 million. Which you kind of think, yeah, okay, that seems fair. Then, of course, the number that was swirling was $600 million. That the teams want. Of course, that will be the number they'd sign the next Concord agreement to for any new team wanting to come in. Now, the last I read, that number is circling north of $1 billion.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is mad. When you've got imagine having to spend, what's that, near enough 8 years worth of budget just to get into Formula 1 in the first place is kind of insane.
Yeah, and I hope that they kind of back down and make it a little easier. Obviously, we've seen members of the FIA and FOM, kind of wanting the team in. I think everyone kind of agrees it's a good thing for the sport, other than the other competitors, because obviously it's more competition. So obviously Andretti are still hopeful if they're hiring people, and I really hope they do. So, well,
I wonder if it's still a little bit of a move from them going, well, we've got all these staff on payroll now, you kind of got to let us in.
Yeah, if they don't, then you're going to have to make them redundant, which isn't fair.
No.
So,
and I still think Formula 1 don't want to look like the bad guys here about not letting Andretti in. I think it's
especially when it's an American team, because that won't do their popularity in America any good.
No, I think this is the big scary thing, isn't it? So you kind of got three different forces pulling on each other.
Yeah.
At the moment, in that regard. I think the last big news we've got, though, sort of looking towards Saudi and actually beyond Saudi Arabia, is Aston Martin have apparently come out saying they're going to be bringing upgrades to every single race, and then a huge one, every single race leading up to, and then a huge update at Imola with effectively the B-spec car.
Yeah, and that's quite exciting as someone who likes to see Alonso do well. So, obviously, a lot of teams will be bringing upgrades to the first few races. We always see that. But if the B-spec car what they're billing as this big upgrade package in Imola, if that lives up to their expectations, that could be big. Because I think sensibly, right now, I would still put them finishing 4th overall, despite having probably the 3rd fastest car in Bahrain. If they can take a step compared to the rest of the competitors, there's no reason why they can't be finishing second, finishing second fastest, or even maybe getting close to Red Bull on tracks that suit them. Then that would be crazy good. I think Alonso winning a race for the first time in 10 years this year is quite a possibility.
I mean, it'd be the longest gap by a landslide between two races.
Previous was Kimi, wasn't it?
It's Kimi, 5 years.
Yeah.
Imagine just Alonso doubles that out of the blue.
We were literally children last time Alonso won a race.
It is mad to think about, isn't it? Because Alonso's last win was still that iconic start, wasn't it, in Barcelona?
2013 Spain.
Spain, yeah. Where he went from 3rd to 1st on the run. Because Alonso seemed to be...
No, you're all wrong.
Was that 5th to 1st, was it?
Let me tell you.
And then around it was around the outside, wasn't it, through turn 3?
It was 5th to 3rd, running outside of Raikkonen and Hamilton at turn 3.
Yeah.
The iconic one was 2011, but his car was so bad he finished 4th that race.
Sorry. I do apologise.
Yeah. Come on, you can't be coming at me with early 2010s
Early 2010s knowledge. Well, Jamie, that leads us on actually beautifully to our F1 quiz this week. Now, Jamie, of course, when we sit down, of course, to write notes ready for the show, we went, you're on quiz this week, Matt. I thought, can't really do a particularly good quiz from the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix because, of course, there's only ever been 2 races here. So, Jamie, your job today is pretty simple, actually. You are going to tell me, of course, Saudi Arabia this year is the 2nd race of the Formula 1 World Championship.
It is.
You are going to go back as far as you can, telling me
the second
every single winner of the 2nd race of the year.
Oh, that's quite hard. Have I got to do it in order?
Yes, you do.
One of them. This will be quite hard. I can't even remember what was the 2nd race last year. Wait, I'm stumped.
You're not stumped already, are you?
It was Saudi Arabia.
It was.
Yeah. So it was Verstappen.
Correct.
Who won that? 2021. Bahrain was 1st. I think Imola was 2nd, which is a bit weird. So I'll go Verstappen again.
Correct.
2020 it was Austria, then Austria, so it was Hamilton.
Correct.
2019 that was normal, so it would have been Australia. Wow, this is really hard. This is a good quiz. Australia, what was even the 2nd race? It was a Mercedes 1-2. So it was Hamilton.
Correct.
Bottas won the first. 2018. That was Australia was the first race, which Vettel won, and then Vettel won again in Bahrain because he got the first 2.
Correct. Yep, I just had to double check that one. I'm having to scroll up and down Wikipedia over and over.
17. Vettel won the first race in Australia. Hamilton won the 2nd race in China.
Correct.
16. Rosberg won the first 4 races because he's the GOAT.
Well, I think that's a bit strong, but yes.
I can't. What was race 2? Bahrain, I think, but it doesn't matter. 15. Hamilton won race 1. Vettel won race 2.
Correct.
In Malaysia. 14. Rosberg won in Australia. Hamilton won in Malaysia again.
Correct.
How far back am I going to 1950? If I can.
Yeah, if you keep going back as far as you need.
What was I on 2013? Raikkonen won
Yes.
Australia, and then I'll play it safe and say Vettel, but I'm not actually sure.
Multi-21, Seb. Multi-21.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I thought it was Vettel in Malaysia. So 2012, Button won the first race in Australia. Alonso won from Perez in Malaysia. 2011. All of these just Malaysian Grand Prix for as far back as it goes.
It might well be.
11, Vettel won race 1 and race 2.
Correct.
2010, that was Australia, so it was Button.
Correct.
09 was Button.
Correct.
Oh, this is where I struggle. This is back as far back as I watched Formula 1, by the way. 08, Hamilton won race 1. I think it was Raikkonen.
Correct.
07.
You've gone further back than I thought you would.
Really?
Yeah,
fair play.
fair
I've
play.
gone through the whole decade and a bit.
A decade and a
07.
half.
07 was actually Alonso at Malaysia. It was a 1-2.
Correct.
06. I think it was Fisichella, which is really weird.
Correct.
Oh, here we go.
This is brilliant.
05 was... this is a guess, but it was probably Alonso.
Correct.
04, this is ridiculous. It was surely Schumacher because he won the first 13.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. He won all but one of the first 13.
Yeah.
03. This is rough. It's real rough. It'd be something dumb, wouldn't it? No, I'll play it safe. Michael Schumacher. Oh, is it Montoya?
Didn't win the first 3 races of 2003. Did Michael Schumacher?
I thought it was a Montoya or Coulthard, but the other two in my head.
But you're still wrong.
Oh wow, who was it?
It was a first ever Grand Prix win. Yeah, Kimi Raikkonen, his first ever dub. 2003 Malaysian Grand Prix.
I got 20 years back. So
that was very impressive. Very.
Try making a short out of that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to squeeze those all in. I think the last thing we've got to do though, Jamie, on the show today, quick fire, top 3 and pole position prediction for the Saudi Arabian
You can
Grand
go
Prix.
first because you're bad.
Thank you. I am going to say then... Oh, do I go Perez? No. Actually, you know what? I'm going to be boring this week. I need the points. Max, Checo, Leclerc. I'm having
That
them.
is real boring.
You can guess some wild ones today.
I'll go... will I go big or will I just be boring?
Go big.
I don't want to just
Go big,
I don't want to
Jamie.
do the exact same as you.
Go big. Go on, do it.
I might actually, given that Ferrari's straight on speed is OP, actually Leclerc might have penalties.
Yeah, but if he's still fastest in qualifying, he still gets pole in this
Are we
world.
saying that?
Yeah.
Okay,
his
I'll say
fastest
Leclerc
time.
pole then. Why not? Verstappen win
Okay.
from... Oh, I need to actually commit to if Leclerc's getting pens or not. I don't think he will. So I go Verstappen, Leclerc, and Sainz.
Okay. Double Ferrari podium.
Yeah, Ferrari are back.
Ferrari are back, according to Jamie183. Is
Indeed.
there anything else we need to go through, Jamie? I think we've rambled a lot today. We've done pretty well.
We've done a lot of rambling. I hope you enjoyed.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you all, as always, so much for listening. We will, of course, return next Tuesday, ready to look back over the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. I just want to say a quick little mention as well. Of course, if you're listening to this on YouTube and you're not already subscribed, please get yourself subscribed. I won't lie, I've had me sub count in the background throughout the show. 104 away from 100k. So please,
You might have that by the time this goes out.
probably not, but we will be ridiculously close with a bit of luck. I'm waiting for a YouTube sub purge at some point just to knock me back to like the mid-90s. But yeah, thank you all so much as always for listening, and we will return very, very soon with more Knowing Wheel.